Good afternoon, Bermuda. I'm Michael Bregman, your moderator, and I welcome you all to the final virtual town hall session on the draft City of Hamilton Plan 2024 with the Department of Planning. I'd like to introduce the director, Victoria Cordero, the planner, Timden Doran, acting senior planner, Kenny Campbell. Now, I want to remind the audience as we go into the presentation that if you have any questions, feel free to submit them either through the Facebook comment section or you can email askus@gov.bm. That's askus@gov.bm. And so I now invite Vicky and her colleagues to begin the presentation, followed by the question and answer section. Vicky?
Thanks, Michael. Welcome to our viewing audience. Thanks for joining us all today. The purpose of today's session is really to provide an update on where we are with the plan making process, an overview of some of the changes we've made, and to set out exactly what is happening next. Having been through the consultative draft stage, which happened last year, we hope everyone should have a clear understanding of the general direction of this development plan, and therefore we don't intend on repeating issues which were covered in detail during last year's presentations. We're now in the second and final round of consultation, and we really appreciate everyone who's contributed to this process so far. And of course, would certainly encourage anyone who wants to submit any further comments as part of this exercise to visit our website for more information. Thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Kenny.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to take you through the first half of this afternoon's presentation, then I'll hand over to my colleague Tamsin, who'll take you through the remainder. So this entire plan making process really started at the end of 2021, which was when we started collecting data and analysing that data to inform the policy stances that are set out within the plan. Now that exercise culminated in the release of the consultative draft plan in January of last year. And just as a reminder, the consultative draft stage was a new stage in the plan making process. Traditionally, when plans are released in Bermuda, it would just go straight to the draft plan stage. We wanted to have an earlier and new stage in the process for two principal reasons. First of all, it provided an increased opportunity for public participation, particularly because it was an earlier stage in the process, and therefore it maximised the opportunity for members of the public and other stakeholders to influence the content of the plan. But it also provided us with an opportunity to try and tease out any issues from members of the public or other stakeholders so that we could try and address those issues before we even got to the draft plan stage of the process. So with consultation being a very important part of that initial stage of the process, we conducted an extensive consultation exercise in support of that plan, including virtual town hall sessions such as this one today, in-person pop-up sessions at various locations throughout the city. We did a radio interview, press conference, and multiple targeted stakeholder presentations. And that included to bodies such as agents, architects, Chamber of Commerce, BEDC, the real estate industry, and of course the Corporation of Hamilton. And we had a lot of good discussions as part of those interactive sessions. So the consultation period on the consultative draft ended in March last year. And since that time, we have been reviewing the comments that we received and determining the most appropriate responses to that information. But what that additional stage in the process has also allowed us to do is further reflect upon the policy stances that are set out within the plan. There's a lot of new ideas and concepts within the plan which have not been tested in a live environment. So having that additional opportunity for internal discussions allowed us to explore how the practicalities of some of those policies, where some of them perhaps needed to be tightened up and where increased flexibility was required. So it was a useful exercise from our own perspective in that regard. So we're now at the stage of the formal draft plan. and that was launched on the 23rd of February, with the consultation period running until the 26th of April. This is a legislated stage of the plan making process, and having been through the consultative draft stage last year, we hope that the draft plan now provides a more solidified representation of policy direction. The substantive content of the draft plan remains broadly similar to that of the consultative draft version. However, we have made a number of changes to the document, and those changes are all set out within the City Survey report to ensure a transparent plan making process and that all of the changes are easily identifiable. So I mentioned the City Survey report there. That was a document that we initially prepared and issued alongside the consultative draft last year. It contains all of the data and analysis work that we have undertaken in order to inform the policy stances set out within the plan. So it's a very important document, and I would encourage anyone who would like to submit comments on the plan to review that document to develop a better understanding of the reasons behind the policies that are set out within the plan itself. So in preparation of the draft plan, we prepared an addendum to the City Survey report, and that contains updated data and analysis work to ensure that our policy stances continue to be fully informed and that they are reflective of current circumstances as well. The City Survey report now also includes details of all consultation submissions that we received last year, as well as the department's responses to each of those submissions. As I said, we want to ensure that we have a fully transparent plan making process in place, and that anyone who has contributed to the process has a complete understanding of how their submissions have been handled by the department. So all of that is set out within the City Survey report. There are also a series of tables within the City Survey report which outline all the changes that have been made to the plan from the consultative draft version, as well as justification for the reasons why. So as the director mentioned at the beginning, the purpose of today's presentation is not really to go through the content of the plan in a significant amount of detail, but I do think it's important to provide a bit of a refresher on some of the key topics of the plan. So first and foremost, and the most important thing, is how the plan will be used. It's a fundamentally different plan to traditional plans in Bermuda in terms of the way that the policies would be applied, and that the plan is to be applied as a whole. And what that means is that when we receive a development proposal, we will identify all of the policies within the plan which are relevant to that proposal and conduct an assessment in the round, taking into account all of the relevant issues. Now, in doing so, there will be particular emphasis placed upon ensuring alignment with the overarching strategic objectives of the plan, which for this version we have transferred into being policy. So that's a really, really important aspect of the plan that we'll be pushing for in applying the plan and determining applications. Also of crucial importance are the placemaking principles set out under policy STR1. We believe that this new approach to the application of planning policy will allow us to reach reasonable, balanced and informed decisions, and it is a method of decision making that has been tested in other jurisdictions, so we know that it can function effectively. And crucially, what it does enable us to do is move away from those instances where a single policy mandates the refusal of a planning application. There have been numerous instances over the years where the department receives a proposal which is considered to be acceptable on balance by both us and the Development Applications Board, but it has had to be refused due to failing to meet a minor technical element of the plan. We want to have a flexible plan in place that allows us to approve proposals which are deemed to be acceptable on balance, and applying the plan in this way will allow us to achieve that. So placemaking continues to be the overarching theme of the plan, and this is a broad policy concept that forces developers to think not only about their own site, but how the development they're proposing can contribute positively towards the character of the surrounding area and enhance the place qualities of the city. And it does so through adopting a design-led approach to development, first and foremost informed by contextual analysis. So what I mean when I say that is that the starting point for any development within the city should be to conduct an analysis of the surrounding area and determine what an appropriate architectural response would be to that existing context, taking into account things such as the scale of existing buildings, massing as well, and looking for any opportunities as you devise your proposals, such as opportunities to enhance views. And as I said, design should be the very start of that process. Now, inevitably, in order to deliver upon the requirements of a client, some compromises will have to be made to a design, but it should be clearly evidenced within design statements that the design of the development has been the primary consideration. And we will be requiring design statements on a more routine basis under this plan, given the strong focus upon design quality. The plan also contains an appendix which provides additional placemaking and design guidance, which provides just a bit further information in terms of the specific issues that the department will be looking at and taking into consideration in determining planning applications using the strategic placemaking principles. So some other key topics: the ground floor of the retail core continues to be protected principally for retailing, which is consistent with the existing city plan. However, we will support complementary uses such as financial, professional services, cafes, restaurants. Essentially what we're trying to do is target those uses which will bring additional footfall into the city and assist in boosting the vitality of the city, which will be to the benefit of existing businesses. Elsewhere, there's a wide range of uses can be supported by the plan, which are complementary to the city's role as the island's principal commercial centre. The plan also sets out strong support for residential development throughout, and there is a multitude of reasons as to why we believe that is a good idea. First of all, you would increase expenditure within the city because you would have an increased catchment of people living on the doorstep of city businesses. But it's also important from a sustainability perspective. A high proportion of people living in Bermuda work within the city of Hamilton, and if they also live within the city of Hamilton, they have less need to obviously commute to places of work. So as I said, it's also a positive from a sustainability perspective. People can walk to their work. Parking, the plan provides strategic support for improvements to the city's public parking network, and that's consistent with the corporation's intention to prepare a parking strategy for the entire city. And the need for on-site private parking facilities must be demonstrated through taking into account issues such as established capacity within the surrounding area of a proposed development. Now, climate change has become the primary consideration for land use planning globally, and it's extremely important that it's an ingrained part of the planning system in Bermuda. So we have introduced a strategic climate change policy into the plan to ensure that the relevant factors are taken into account, to ensure that we're taking into account climatic considerations in determining planning applications from a strategic perspective. The plan also introduces a requirement for energy statements, evidencing that conscious effort has been made to minimise the energy needs of a development at the various stages of the development process, and that begins at the very outset with the design of a proposal. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Tamsin Duran, who's going to take you through the remainder of the presentation.
Thanks, Kenny. So as Kenny previously mentioned, through the consultative draft consultation period, we received a lot of feedback. And we looked at that feedback and considered it. And as a result, there was a number of changes made to the plan. I'm going to go through some of those changes now. So first and foremost, we did receive a lot of feedback from people who acknowledged that we have an aging population. There was a real request to highlight and sort of expand upon the requirement to ensure that design is accessible. So we took a look at the plan, and we have added a new objective which addresses that specifically. We also took a look at the placemaking policy, which is the overarching policy, and we've sort of highlighted that and elevated its importance in both the placemaking policy and the associated appendix. We received comments related to the waterfront, which is an existing strategic development site and will continue to be a strategic development site. So some of the comments received essentially said that the policy did not take into account that the waterfront has an existing use, which essentially is an active port for cruise ships and for other visiting vessels. And they wanted to ensure that the policy associated with its redevelopment took that into consideration and ensured that use would be retained. And I think, we agree, when the cruise ships come in and the visiting vessels come in, they add a lot of vitality to the waterfront and the city. So we have adjusted the policy accordingly to take that into consideration. We received additional feedback associated with uses. So there was a lot of clarification being sought as it relates to the uses that the new plan would support in the city. Under the consultative draft plan, the intention of the policy was essentially to allow for a very diverse range of uses. But given the feedback we were receiving, I think we realized that maybe the way we'd interpreted the policy to be taken on wasn't actually being received as we planned. So we went back in and we've changed the policy to make that clear. We received feedback as it relates to ensuring that cultural heritage within the city is considered and that its importance is elevated. So again, we went into the placemaking policy, which is this overarching policy that has to be applied to all developments in the city. And we expanded upon and sort of elevated the importance of cultural heritage within the placemaking context. We were originally under the consultative draft. We had 4 strategic development sites. So that was the City Hall Car Park, the Parleville Car Park, the waterfront, and the former Canadian Hotel site. And through the consultative draft consultation process, we received a recommendation to consider including, there's a vacant excavated lot at the corner of Joel's Alley and Church Street. And there was a recommendation that we consider including that as a strategic development site. So we went out and we took a look at it. And, upon reflection, I think realized that if appropriately developed, that site could actually be a catalyst for the area, could really add some vitality to the area. So we reached out to the owner of the property. They were definitely open and agreeable to it being promoted as a strategic development site within the new plan. So we've added that site. We received a lot of feedback as it relates to street trees and the importance of street trees in terms of cooling the city, particularly obviously in the public realm. And while we recognize that street trees really fall under the mandate of the Corporation of Hamilton, new developments on lots that are obviously adjacent to the sidewalk can have big implications on street trees, whether it's through getting access for construction or the design of the building. So, in recognizing the importance, we have added a policy that speaks to the protection and consideration of street trees and design. And then finally, we took a look at the subdivision policy again, and essentially under the subdivision policy, under the consultative draft, we had set in a number of measures and criteria which had to be met in the assessment of any subdivision application. We went back and we took a look at those, and I think we felt as though some of them might not be as relevant to the city as we had originally thought. So we revised that policy so that it was a little bit more meaningful within the city context. Kenny, could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what happens next? So once we reach the deadline, which again, Kenny has said is the 26th of April, what happens next? Well, the department will consider the content of all the comments that have been submitted through this consultation process that we're going through right now. We'll reach out and we will have contact with the individuals, acknowledge receipt, where we can come to a resolution between objections received. There will be a resolution made. Where there are instances where that's not possible and there is not the ability to resolve the issue between the objector and the department, the objector will have the opportunity to present their case at a tribunal. The tribunal will prepare a report with its recommendations that will then be presented to the minister, and the minister will ultimately make the decision, finalize the plan, and then we will pursue its adoption through the legislator. Can you click to the next slide for me? Thank you. So how do you submit comments if you want to? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to our website, which is planning.gov.bm. When you get there, you're going to see the front cover of the draft City of Hamilton plan. So if you click on that, it'll take you to our draft City of Hamilton plan webpage. And there's information on that webpage. There are links to the story map version of the draft plan. There is a link to a PDF version of the draft plan. And then there's also a link to the story map, the City of Hamilton, not story map, I'm so sorry, the City Survey Report 2024. So the first thing I would highly recommend you do is take a look at the City Survey Report. It has an addendum with all of the feedback we received through the consultative draft consultation phase. It really has all of our research, all of our updated research. And the reason that's so important is because it gives you an understanding of our thought process and how our research has informed the policy within the plan. So take a look at that. If you still have comments that you want to submit, at the bottom of that webpage, there is a paragraph which explains how you can do that. We are encouraging everyone to submit their comments through the customer self-service portal. So please keep in mind, you do need to register an account first in order to submit your objection or your recommendation. And once you do that, you would just go and follow through screen instructions, and it will take you step by step through the process. So I think with that, I'm going to, is that the last slide? Kenny, can you click on, oh, no, there's a timeline slide. Sorry about that. Yeah. So in terms of the overall timeline, I've circled where we are at the moment. So we have essentially done all of our research. We have gone through the consultation process associated with the consultative draft plan. We have gathered feedback from that. We have used that to refine the draft City of Hamilton plan. And right now we are through our second and last consultation phase. So that will end on the 26th of April. After that, we will take a look at the objections. We will consider all of them, prepare departmental reports where resolutions cannot be made between objectors and the department. There will be a tribunal appointed, and each party will have the ability to present their case to the tribunal, who will make recommendations, which the minister will then consider. We are aiming to have all of that done and dusted by the end of this year. So the hope is that by or before the end of this year, we would have a plan adopted and that it would become an operative document, which applications within the city would be assessed against. Can you click to the next slide? So with that, I'm going to hand you back over to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. Apparently I am frozen in time here, but I will speak anyway. Anyway, just again, we really encourage the questions. This is what it's all about. It's about the collaboration and the dialogue with the public. Thank you for your attention and tuning in today. Even after today, please reach out. My team are more than willing to have conversations all about the city and where we want it to go in the future, how we want it to look, what matters to you as a member of the public. It's really important. That's what this is all about, as I mentioned. So thank you. I look forward to some interesting questions being posed.
Thank you, Vicki, and the team at the Department of Planning for another very thorough and informative presentation on the draft City of Hamilton Plan 2024. So I want to remind those watching that this is the final town hall session on the draft City of Hamilton Plan and an opportunity for the public to ask questions about the plan. So I encourage everyone to submit the questions either through the Facebook comment section, or you can email them to askus@gov.bm. You can see it right on your screen. And so we will now enter the Q&A part of this session. We do have quite a few questions that have been submitted here, so I'll start at the top. And this is one that I think a lot of people are curious about. Can you clarify the rules of the Corporation of Hamilton and the Department of Planning?
Sure, I'll take that one, Tamsin. Yeah, this actually did come up quite a lot as part of the various consultation exercises that we've undertaken, and people were just a bit confused as to responsibilities in terms of preparing land use documents and determining planning applications. But essentially, that's our responsibility as the Department of Planning. In reality, we will consult with the corporation when we're preparing a land use plan for any part of the city, including North East Hamilton as well, which falls outside the scope of this plan, to ensure that they are aware of proposed development activity within the city. And they can input into that process from a policy making perspective, but at planning application stage they're also consulted on every planning application within the city to ensure that any mitigation measures are applied which may be required to development on a case by case basis. But as I'm sure most people will appreciate, the corporation's responsibilities generally relate to the day-to-day management and maintenance of the city and the city's various infrastructure networks.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you for clarifying that. So the next question we have, and I think again this is one that's been asked in the past as well, Kenny. What is placemaking?
Yeah, I can take that one. So as Kenny sort of touched on in some of his earlier slides, so placemaking is a broad and overarching concept, which essentially the goal of it is to promote successful and sustainable places. And we've seen it implemented in many parts of the world, and it can really change the environment of the city in a very positive way. I mean, the corporation has already been implementing placemaking for a number of years in their management of the city. It's focused usually in every jurisdiction. There might be different sets of core principles, but you would have a set of core principles that would be applied to development proposals. And the idea is that if every time a development proposal comes in, we're really thinking about these placemaking principles that over a sustained period, we will have a real change in the city and creation, some really successful places and enhancement of existing places in the city that are already very successful. It kind of will hopefully allow the city to be less of a place where you would just visit, I think, as Kenny said many times, out of necessity, and more of a destination where you want to come and you want to spend time. And if you're coming, you're spending time, then you're going to hopefully spend money, right? Under this draft plan, we have 6 core placemaking principles. Those are distinctive, safe and pleasant, connected and easy to move around and beyond, welcoming, adaptable, and sustainable and resource efficient. So any applications that are going to come in for development in the city, we're going to want to see how they've considered those 6 placemaking principles in their design. And under the policy and in the associated appendix, we've kind of given some ideas and some things that can really be considered, in implementing those core principles.
And sorry, Michael, can I just add to that as well?
Yeah, certainly.
I don't want people to think we're just pursuing this placemaking agenda because it sounds like a sort of nice, innovative concept. There are real positive economic implications which can arise if placemaking is applied appropriately to any area really over a sustained period of time. And as Tamsin said, if we can achieve that within the city, and the city becomes an attractive place in and of itself, the economic consequences of that will follow. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to create an environment for increased business activity and vitality within the city, and that's all underpinned by placemaking. And there are numerous studies in this, principally in the US, which have shown the actual economic consequences of adopting a placemaking approach. So we're really hopeful that this could be a positive initiative for the city over the long term. And as Tamsin said, that the corporation are acutely aware of placemaking principles and have been attempting to implement placemaking type projects in public spaces for a number of years now. We're seeking to try and complement that in the land use plans that we are applying to the city.
Okay, so you both raised a good point that the Corporation of Hamilton are already putting in place these placemaking principles. Can you give us any good examples of where in the city someone can go and actually see it right now and kind of how it's impacting how the city is improving?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Gosh, there's so many great examples in the city that the corporation have implemented. So one that comes to mind would be right outside of Washington Mall on Reed Street. They've sort of expanded or widened the sidewalk and created a lovely seating area with some landscaping. In the summer, they put umbrellas out. So that is one example. They've also installed on the waterfront the Hamilton I don't really know how to call it, but it's like a big iconic Hamilton sign, which people like to go and have a photographic experience near or next to. There's various mosaic pieces of art around the city, whether it's benches or other, planters, and even in front of City Hall, they've created that sort of mosaic seat, which create, again, like photographic experience, add interest to the city. They obviously have their art installation mural program, which is up and running, which you can go around and experience some beautiful murals across the city. It stimulates conversation and interest and gets people really wanting to kind of walk around the city. I think their new work on Washington Lane, which has been completed with the sort of multicolored paving and the lighting, and they've added some landscaping, planters. They've done some beautiful work, but those are just examples of creating spaces where people want to spend time, and it's interesting and it stimulates conversation. And, yeah.
So just to add again, that's obviously how you can achieve it within public spaces, but what we are trying to achieve, because it's our what falls within our remit is how you can apply placemaking to actual buildings through architectural detailing. And that's why we have the placemaking guidance set out as an appendix to the plan. So we're as I said, we're trying to complement the role that the corporation is playing in introducing these placemaking ideas into the city. And there's definite scope to complement that in the actual architecture of a building. I mentioned earlier on that context should be the first consideration in deriving appropriate design solutions for development within the city. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to replicate what's there at the moment, because that would actually be counter to some of the key placemaking aspirations, such as being distinctive. So that's something that I would certainly strongly push for and promote is new distinctive forms of development which do recognise the location that they're in and are sensitive to traditional Bermudian architectural characteristics, but you can still achieve a contemporary solution and make it and form a distinctive development, which in essence is placemaking.
Okay, and you know what you just said kind of segues into my next question that I have here about industrial development. Now, how has that been considered in the whole plan?
Yeah, I can take that one on. So the City Survey Report 2024 has all of our research that was done. We actually took a lot of time on this issue, walking the streets, looking at the existing industrial operations, and just observing, their traffic, observing the sidewalks, observing the environments that they're sort of creating. So all of that is outlined in the City Survey Report. It's quite an interesting read. I think essentially what came out of that was a number of common issues that were routinely observed with these existing industrial operations. One is that they tend to have potentially multiple vehicular access points over the sidewalks. So, a lot of drop curves, vehicular access points. So you've got trucks moving across the sidewalk. You've got roller doors, which are, can be, if there's too many of them, quite unsightly. And they can, cumulatively in these areas. And what we've also noted is that in some parts of the city, there's a real accumulation of these industrial activities taking place. So over time, what tends to happen is that the streetscape becomes, not really the most enjoyable place as a pedestrian to walk and to enjoy. You're sort of interacting with large trucks. There's sometimes fumes and noise that can be, not very enjoyable as you're walking by. So we see in some of these areas that then there's a lack of pedestrian activity, which then particularly in evening hours can result in a bit of a safety issue. you know. So all of these things together through our research really solidified our stance that the city is not really the most appropriate place for industrial operations. So we've taken quite a firm stance on that in the new plan. That being said, if you had sort of a retail use, for example, that wanted to do, you know, an accessory storage addition or something to support its retail use, the plan would support that. If you have right now, let's say you have like an industrial storage yard that is fully exposed and in full public view, you know, and is an outside sort of storage yard, and you wanted to build a structure to enclose it, you know, that might be something the plan could support, provided it's not being intensified and provided that the building is designed appropriately. But I would definitely suggest go and take a look at the city survey, because the information in there is quite extensive and detailed. It's going to really allow people to understand our thought process as it comes to the industrial development within the city side of things. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much for that response. I just want to remind again the audience watching to submit your questions. This is the final town hall meeting and a great opportunity to immediately get responses to any queries you may have about the plan. So I'm going to move on to the next one that we have here. So let me just read it out. What are the department's thoughts about the changes to the roadway recently proposed by the Corporation of Hamilton at Queen Street?
All right, I'll have a shot at this one. The corporation consulted us on that proposal a few weeks ago, and I think firstly it's important to say that we're not roads engineers in here, so I'll kind of stay away from that territory. But overall, we were fairly supportive of their proposal. I think it does actually incorporate placemaking elements to it. I don't know if you've seen it yourself, Michael, but there's a proposal which would include like an island at the very top of Queen Street.
I have seen it.
Yeah, to facilitate pedestrian access, essentially from south to north, connecting into City Hall car park site. So, you know, we would certainly very much strongly advocate for enhanced any proposals which could enhance pedestrian movement within the city. But that island itself, I think the corporation are proposing some form of public art within the island, as well as some landscaping works, which will make that a feature in and of itself. And again, you know, that's a kind of placemaking concept. I think they're also proposing to expand sidewalks in certain locations. And again, as I said, we would strongly advocate for any enhancements within the city which would provide for a positive pedestrian experience. So overall, we were supportive of the proposals that the corporation presented us with. But as I said, you know, I'll stay away from the roads engineering side of things. And I'm sure that the corporation are talking to the people that need to talk to about that. But just to clarify, the majority of those works will not require planning permission, so they probably won't come to us, because they're probably going to be undertaken in accordance with the corporation's own legislation. There may be a couple of minor elements of it that could require planning consent, but you know, we're in ongoing dialogue with the corporation about that.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to switch from the emailed questions to some that we've received on Facebook. So the question reads, does this plan have any consideration for pedestrianization of the city to promote healthy lifestyles and increase use of public transport and outdoor activities / dining?
I can take that one. Again, this is something that did come up in a lot of our discussions, particularly when we were doing the in-person pop-up sessions. Pedestrianisation of the city does not fall within our remit. That would be something entirely for the corporation to undertake. So, you know, that's not really something for us. But as I said, in answer to the previous question, we would advocate for proposals which would enhance the pedestrian experience of the city. And again, that's not just because that sounds like a nice thing to do. There are actual studies which show that if you can focus an urban centre first and foremost on pedestrian movement and not so much on vehicular movement, you create that welcoming and pleasant environment that people want to spend time in. And when that happens, they spend money. And when that happens, businesses benefit. And when that happens, the city becomes a more viable location for prospective businesses. And we hope that that cyclical process can start to see some of the existing vacant space within the city occupied. So there's a whole thought process behind some of the policy stances that were set out within the plan. And as Tamsin mentioned, a lot of that information is set out within the city survey report. In terms of outdoor activities and dining, I think we've had a few proposals, and we would have to assess them alongside the corporation as well, because in a lot of instances those proposals fall within corporation land. But yeah, we would on the whole advocate for that sort of thing. I think it's something which is underutilized, particularly the outdoor dining in Bermuda, given the climate. And we have had a couple of applications that we have approved for those uses within the city.
Okay. So the next one we have on Facebook, I would definitely say it is for the city, but I'd like to get your thoughts on it. So this person is concerned about uneven sidewalks, especially because they can be challenging for some people with balance issues, right? Possibly falling down. So what are your thoughts on that, and possibly having the city maybe level them off to make them more easily accessible to those kind of people?
Yeah, I don't think it's for us to comment on that at all, Michael.
Right.
That's really a matter for the corporation, and I wouldn't want to comment on something that falls within their remit.
Yeah, understandable. So let's get to some of these email questions that are coming in. So this person is asking, if someone applied for a 20-story building within the city, does the plan support this, or will the plan support this?
Yeah, I'll take this one, because I think we had a similar sort of question during the last town hall meeting. As I said, the plan promotes a design-led approach to development underpinned by contextual analysis. And when you conduct that contextual analysis, you will be looking at prevailing architectural conditions within the surrounding area, such as the scale and massing of buildings. So when you look at the context of an area, you're not, as I said earlier on, you're not, what we're not saying is that you have to replicate what's there, but you have to be respectful of what's there and determine what an appropriate architectural response would be to that established context. So there are no 20-story buildings across the city, and I know that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but you have to provide an appropriate response to the established scale of a building. That's the sort of guidance that's actually set within the appendix to the plan that I referenced as well. So it's not just because we don't have predefined numerical standards, it doesn't mean that it's a complete free-for-all within the city. It just places the onus upon developers, architects to demonstrate to us why a particular proposal would be acceptable, taking into account the guidance that we have set out within the plan. And as I said, first and foremost, that is conducting a quality contextual analysis of the surroundings of a site. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to the next question we have, what is the plan's stance on communal open space being provided for residential developments?
Yeah, I can take on this one, Kenny. So through the city survey report, we actually took a look at communal open space. Essentially what we determined was that they tend to rarely be utilized within these residential developments. The cost of constructing them then actually rolls over onto the cost of the people living in them, whether it's maintenance costs or the purchase cost if they're units that are for sale. And we also, on the other side, we also saw that we have some incredible parks in the city, which, already offer great opportunity for outdoor passive recreation, if people want to go and sort of have a communal experience. So because of that, we actually took the stance that the plan will no longer, as it has previously done, it will no longer require communal outdoor space to be provided for residential developments. That being said, one thing that is new in the plan is that a residential development, would have to make a community benefit contribution to an existing area of public open space in the city, whether it's a public park or the public realm, in order to enhance that for the use of the public.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. So moving on to the next question we have here. So will residential units still be required to provide private outdoor space?
I can take that one too.
Like private yards and all that, I suppose.
Yeah, I can answer that one as well. So yeah, I mean, I think what we recognize through our research is that definitely going through the pandemic, I think it really highlighted the importance and the value of private outdoor spaces, particularly in city environments. People really turn to these spaces as a way to connecting with the natural environment, especially in the city, if they were living in the city. And there's been a number of studies shown that they can really, impact mental health. So we're definitely still going to require private outdoor space. But what our research did show is that they have to be designed appropriately, and they have to be designed, there's certain factors that we need to see being considered in their design to ensure that they actually are usable spaces that can be enjoyed by the residents. So what the plan does do is it really highlights the importance of considering things like, what are some of the things? So shade from the elements. We saw covered outdoor spaces are going to be used more than uncovered outdoor spaces. We saw orientation was important, privacy with other amenity spaces, particularly in an office building, or not an office building, a residential building, where you would have balconies. Each balcony is going to want to have privacy from the balcony next to it. So, what the plan does do is it takes a bit of a renewed focus on, yes, we're still going to require the private amenity spaces to be provided, but we're going to want people to really consider their design to make sure that they are spaces that are enjoyed and that they're used, majority of the time of the year if we can.
Yeah, makes total sense. So we have a couple more questions, and then I think we should be at the point of just wrapping up, and you guys can give any closing remarks that you would like to share. So the next couple we have are, have any changes been made to the historic areas?
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit last year when we were doing our consultation sessions on the consultative draft, because we made a couple of changes at that time. So there's the Front Street historic area, and previously the boundary for that cut through a couple of buildings, so it was quite confusing, and it caused an issue for a couple of planning applications in that part of the city. So we have refined the boundary of that historic area to ensure that it's capturing buildings in their entirety. Also last year as well, we conducted a review of the Queen Street historic area, particularly Queen Elizabeth Park, and we're basically looking to determine what are the historical merits of that park specifically, and therefore does it merit continued inclusion within the historic area. And our heritage officer conducted quite a lot of research on that, and there was no historical reason as to why that park should have that formal recognition. So we removed that area in the consultative draft that we issued last year. We've also tightened up that historic area as well, so that it now finishes at P-Tech, right on the corner of Reed Street there, and the jewellery store on the opposite side of the road. Because if you look north from there, I think the architectural merits of any of the buildings is really questionable from those points onwards.
All right, sounds good. And another one we have here. So does the plan cover at all the northeast Hamilton part of the city?
No, it doesn't. And I think I said that during my presentation, it excludes Northeast Hamilton, and that area has a dedicated plan, the Northeast Hamilton Local Plan 2022. That's not to say that a comprehensive plan for the city won't be prepared at a future date encompassing that area, and I think there are merits to that. But at this moment in time, no, it's Northeast Hamilton has its own local plan. It's also important though that these plans don't exist in complete isolation and that they're complementary. And there's a number of references to Northeast Hamilton within the city plan that we're working on at the moment, and the community benefits initiative that we're attempting to roll out with this plan that Tamsin referenced. I think there could be we could be looking at projects alongside that would have to involve the corporation to try and enhance connections between the city and Northeast Hamilton, to try and encourage greater footfall in that part of the city as well, to benefit businesses. I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot more could be done to try and promote Northeast Hamilton a little bit more. And some of those were touched upon when we were preparing the Northeast Hamilton local plan. But as I said, this plan at this moment in time, it just relates to the city outside of Northeast Hamilton.
Sounds good. All right, so we that seems to be the final question that we've received thus far. I just want to give you guys, the team at Planning, an opportunity. Do you have any closing remarks you would like to share? Anything at all?
Vicky, are you there?
I'm here, still frozen. But just want to say, I appreciate these opportunities. COVID taught us a lot and brought us some new ways of doing things. And I have to say, doing these virtual town halls has certainly been, I think, a success story from our, wonderful time during COVID. But, as planners, we're always looking for new and different ways of trying to consult members of the public. And I think this one does a pretty good job of it. So just thanks to everyone who took the time to watch us today during your lunch hour, and wish everyone a great day. And like I mentioned before, I'll say it again. If you want to come in and have like a private chat with one of the members of the team here, Tamsin or Kenny, or both, just send us an email, give us a call. We are here to chat. So thank you again. And thanks to Michael for setting all this up.
You're very welcome. And I want to reiterate and thank the Department of Planning again for an excellent job on giving this presentation. It's very informative and, with a great opportunity for the public to learn about the plan and ask any questions they may have. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here at this consultative live session, and wish you all a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.